So as I say, I will send you all a copy of the recording along with the PowerPoint that we'll start off with. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, so you can all see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so what we're going to do today, it's an overview of Management Reporter. It's just a short 45-minute session just to give you some insight on how it's developed over the past few years, where it's going, where Microsoft are taking it, and some of the new features in the latest version, which was just released, was CU8. They've actually now released a CU9 for a couple of bug fixes. So it's pretty much up to date, but the CU8 upgrade was actually quite a big improvement with some neat features that we're going to look at today. Okay. So as an introduction, my name is Carl Johnson. I'm a solutions consultant with Ebex, which basically means I'm in the pre-sales team. I'm finance and project specialist, and I work a lot with Management Reporter during demonstrations. A couple of assumptions for today's meeting. I'm assuming that everyone has seen Management Reporter before, okay, because this isn't a beginner's based training. I'm also assuming that you're all aware of the either in 2009 or 2012 AX, the main account and financial dimension build and structure, primarily within AX 2012. And also, or you're currently working using Management Reporter and you're just looking for more hints and tips. Okay. Preferably if we can run through the session, and if you have any questions, if you can just jot them down, then we can cover them off at the end. So we'll have a possibly 45-minute session on the overview and then the software, and then 15 minutes at the end to answer any of your questions. And the topics, so we're going to cover the overview, then we're going to discuss consolidations, some side-by-side reporting, how you graphically analyze the reports. We'll look at drill down, and then we'll talk about the integration with Microsoft Office. Some of these reports I'll show you, some of them I'll just explain how you can do it, and then it's a lead into you going away, playing with it, and just seeing what you can do with the reports, because they're basically there for you to play with. Okay. So we'll start with the overview. So just as a basis, for those that you are aware or not, Management Reporter started out life as FRX reporting, if any of you are familiar with it, going back about 10 years now. It was produced by accountants for accountants, and it was based on a spreadsheet with now a SQL engine behind it, but that's where it began and that's where it evolved. And that's why when you're looking at it, you can see a lot of the familiarity between spreadsheets and Management Reporter. The FRX report, as it used to be, was compatible with Sage, and it was also compatible with Epicor and fairly most of the other accounting packages as well. In, I believe it's 2009, Microsoft bought Management Reporter, bought FRX, called it Management Reporter, and they used it primarily for Microsoft Dynamics. Okay, so they took it away from the rest of the market and they used it as their reporting tool. And I think the main reason for that was because if you've used AX 2009, the financial reporting structure in there was quite complex and wasn't very easy to produce reports. And they saw FRX, saw how easy it actually was. They made their necessary changes and modifications, as they continue to do, and then they came back with the Management Reporter strictly for Dynamics. Okay. It's real-time financial reporting because it runs off its own server. So whereas you would have data cubes for KPIs and etc., they need to be pushed and produced and ordinarily overnight. Management Reporter runs, and as soon as you put a transaction through, as long as the server's running, the transaction will update through to Management Reporter. It's an intuitive approach, and it has robust architecture. And the reason for that is because it's a user-based tool, so you don't need to go to your IT department at any point to create a report. Even if there's issues with the report, it's something that as a user you would fix rather than IT, because to be honest, it's all about finance that IT probably wouldn't understand anyway. Okay. As I say, it's got live updates. If you add a new company into your AX, as soon as the data is refreshed, that will automatically appear to be used and reported against in Management Reporter as well when the company is imported. And it also copies across the user privileges. So if you only have access to certain records within AX, you can only report on them in Management Reporter. So it keeps the privileges deck that you have across AX into Management Reporter. It has a direct integration with Dynamics. You can access AX via Management Reporter itself by drilling down, as we'll have a look at later, or you can, from within AX, you can access Management Reporter direct from the reporting menu from AX 2012 onwards. And the various outputs that are included now, you can email reports, you can produce web-based reports that you can copy the URL and integrate. You can publish them to SharePoint as well, and you can also publish them back to Excel. Okay. A couple of points. This slide was put in mainly for information for you when I send the slide deck out, but it gives you rapid results without the need for IT, as I mentioned. Okay, so it's live time and it's user friendly. You build your own custom reports. You don't need to have a standard report for profit and loss, for example, can be utilized for various different types. You have the structure for profit and loss. You can use that structure for any of the business units or any of the financial dimensions. So you only need to create one structure of P&L, one or two, and you can change the look and feel of that based on one standard. It increases productivity with familiar tools. It's interface with Microsoft Office, email, Excel, and so on. It can also publish reports to PowerPoint. And you can monitor the reports in real time. So if you publish any of these reports to your role center in AX, that may be to a role center for your CFO or your finance director, so they can see live time data, so they're not constantly asking you for updated reports. There's enhanced collaboration and sharing, so the communication across all of your organization is now able to receive the reports in any format that they need. It's no longer paper based. Okay, you can upload it to SharePoint, you can go to a specific library, and the document bundling, you can have set types of reports for different parts of the business, and once that's created, it's pushed out straight away. And you can schedule reports as well. So if you have a management pack that you've built, you can schedule them to be on the 10th of every month, because that's the deadline. All of the reports are already made, it's just the data is up to date, so on the 10th of every month they can pick up the necessary reports and publish them to the necessary departments as well. So it's all time-saving tools once you create the basis. And there's the safeguard of financial data using the Active Directory integration. Okay, so it makes it easier to tailor your settings so that only certain people that have the permissions can have the information that's obviously sensitive to your business, so you wouldn't want everybody to access that information. So what's new in Management Reporter 2012? There's a few things that stand out as new good features that we'll be looking at. The key Microsoft put forward was to make the most from your financial dimensions. Okay, because when you're reporting, you don't always need the main account. So in previous versions of AX, the main account was the base of your chart of accounts, and then you created some financial dimensions off the back of that. With AX 2012 and Management Reporter 2012, it puts a whole new look on how you create your chart of accounts with your financial dimensions as well. I personally, when I've been with customers, I've always advised that you don't need to be restrictive of how many dimensions that you have. Some people think it overcomplicates matters if you have, for example, 20 different dimensions. If it's built properly, that's not the case, because once you have a main account and you have the 20 dimensions, it doesn't mean you post one transaction and you have to populate all 20. With using the account configuration structure, you can define each account and the areas they need to populate. So in actual fact, the more financial dimensions that you have, the better reporting analysis on your business you will receive. Obviously in 2012, AX 2012, it's limitless to the amount of dimensions that you can have. And you can map them to projects, employees, a bespoke custom list that you've created. Any part of your business you need to report on, to analyse, it's always recommended you create that as a financial dimension. Also, to make use of the hierarchies for your organisation. So when you set up an organisational hierarchy within AX, utilise it with Management Reporter, because now the reporting trees that you should be familiar with, you can now incorporate the organisation hierarchies that you've already created for your business. So if you have a procurement section of your organisation hierarchy, you can run a report at that level so that you can do an overall picture of procurement, and then you can subdivide the report by each level of the procurement hierarchy. It's also useful for budgets, because you can have a budget hierarchy, and as we'll look at some budget reports, you can analyse the budgets based on the hierarchy you've already defined. This is an example of a reporting tree with a hierarchy. So on the left hand side you can see the reporting tree within AX. So you have the Department of Autos goes down to sales and marketing, operations and finance, etc. And then beneath sales and marketing you have the trade shows and marketing area, and then beneath operations you have service operations. On the right of the screen you can see, as an example of Management Reporter, how that's utilised. So you have a standard income statement for all of the business, but then in the bottom left hand corner you have a reporting tree. When you select the reporting tree, it's asking you which level of this hierarchy do you want to view the value. And this enables you to produce an income statement. Sorry? This enables you. Hello? This enables you to produce an income statement for the service operations department, for example. That's how granular it can be, and it would be in the same format as the standard income statement that you would produce in your monthly management pack. Another new feature within the CU8 build of Management Reporter is the ability to drill down to the supplier or customer name. This has been something that's asked on several occasions from our customers, and thankfully Microsoft have listened and they've incorporated it. So if you produce a transaction list and you drill down to the lower level of the transaction itself, you can now see who the customer or who the supplier is within the report. This helps auditing capabilities, because you can time and date stamp as well when this was produced. And it can also incorporate into balance sheet items as well. Side-by-side reporting is part of the US GAAP rules that they've incorporated, but it's also useful in the UK because primarily we've seen assets and liabilities on left and right side of the balance sheet. Previous standard, you have side-by-side. And you can see there that it's all in one list. Now with one small change, you can do reporting side by side. Okay. I'm just going to, I've got an error message. Okay, is everyone getting feedback?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am
Yep.
too. Okay. Okay, I'm going to close this session and then reopen it, so you'll need to rejoin. Is that okay?
Okay.
Apologies for this, but I'm not sure why the feedback's coming through now. Or has it just stopped?
So it's clear now.
Yeah, okay, good. I don't know why that was, but okay, we will continue. So that's a view of some of the new features. What we'll do now is we'll go into Management Reporter and we'll have a look round, run a few reports, show what we can do with it. And then at the end of it, I want to close off with how it's being moved into the apps, the world of apps, okay, within the Business Analyzer. Okay. So I've just gone into the Management Reporter screen itself. So I'll give it a few seconds just so that everyone's screen refreshes. So I'm assuming everyone can see the screen now?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, before we move on to here, is everybody okay with the initial overview?
Yeah.
Yes, excellent. Okay, so assuming you've seen Management Reporter before, what I'm going to do here, we're going to have a look at the report definition, then we're going to look at the rows, columns and reporting trees, and then we'll discuss the groups and the schedules. Okay, we're going to build a report, we're going to have a look at reports that I've pre-built, obviously for time's sake, and then we'll just drill in to see any new areas and some new features that improve productivity and streamline the process that we're trying to do. So we've just got a standard balance sheet in the reporting definition. So the 4 key tabs across the top, this is a balance sheet and you can see it's for the company USMF. If you do a drop down, you can change this to run for any company that you have in AX, and if it's the symbol at any, that will show any, and then within the report definitions you have to specify which companies you want to include. We'll have a look at that when we go into the consolidations in more detail. You've got the detail level, and this is basically asking how do you want to drill down when you're within. Do you want to go down to the finite detail of the transaction, or is it just a financial report to give you the main page header without the drill down details? Then you have the provisional level, so you can have your posted activity or you can include unposted activity. So if you have any journals that are batched, waiting to process, or they process via a subledger, they can be incorporated as well. All of this information can be set as default, so when you create a new report, the default information will pull through. One of the new features is that you now can include all reporting currencies. Okay, so the reporting currencies set up for the company you select can be included when you run the report. It will pick up the default currency, USD, but if you select to include the reporting currencies, you can produce the report, and when you've produced it, you can select to change the currency view. So we can change this into GBP, all the values converted to GBP. In the output and distribution, you can see the output report name, so this can be changed at any point. When you generate, do you want to view it? And then you have the output locations, and this is quite important because when you produce the report each time, it's going to, as standard, post into a library location. This obviously needs to be a server-based location because it could hold lots of reports depending on how often you run it. Okay, you can do it to a single location, or you can include multiple locations within the report library, so it could go off to various people in the business. You've got some standard information here where you have options to include formats. You can underscore rows, you can report duplicate accounts for exception reporting and so on. As we'll look at, you can export to Excel. And when you export to Excel, what do you want to do? Do you want to include any fonts and shading that you've incorporated into your report? Do you want to generate a single worksheet? And do you want to include any comments that we add to reports, which we'll look at shortly? Then we have the options with XPS, which is your online publication of your reports. Do you want to include comments in the rows? Do you want to include rows and column breaks, or do you want it to be continuous? The headers and footers. This is useful from the basis of the section layout. So you have the first section, the middle, and the right-hand section in the headers, and then you have the same in the footers, middle, left, and right. This can be useful if you time and date stamp your reports. If you do want to publish them and actually print them, if you put the time and date stamp on it, you'll know the version that you're running. You can also change the logo. If we go to images, you can see the images available. We'll choose a nice EBEX image, and that changes straight away, and that will be shown in the header section at the top. The middle section, if you double click, it gives you the options of what you want to see. So from the header, you can see if you want to include the company description, which is a table within AX, it's at comp desk. And then you can see do the same for company name and so on. So the data that you've previously set up will be brought through from automatic fields. And that's the same for the report name and so on. And then in settings, you have the traditional formatting of the report itself. So do you want it to be whole dollars, if you're using dollars, or you can round it to the nearest thousands and so on. The calculation priority, when it runs through the report and it collects a lot of data, it can sometimes be easier if it runs through the row before the column. Otherwise it will run through the column and then the row. It's also asking you the process order. It's only applicable for high volume data reports. And then you have the formatting. Do you want to display negative numbers in red? Do you want the currency symbol on the first row? And one of the keys, do you display blanks for zero amounts? If you deselect that, you will have a better looking report for sure. Okay. So that's the report definition. You then build into your report the building blocks, how the report is created, the data within it. So in the building blocks you have rows, and then you have columns, and then you have tree types. These options are available on the left hand side, as you can see as well, and this gives you a familiarity of the look and feel of AX as well. If we now go into the row for balance sheet, and this is how the balance sheet row looks like. So you would create a row as well for your profit and loss, for an income statement and so on. And then for each report definition, you assign it to whichever row you've just built. It gives a look and feel of an Excel spreadsheet. You can name the description at the top. So the current assets is a field you can type in, and that will appear on your report. The format code, what is going to be in this row? Is it a total of other rows? Is it a calculation? Are you putting in a description? If you leave it blank, it will skip over to the link to financial dimensions on the right hand side. Column D shows the formulas and the link, so you can see that what we have further down in the related rows and units, we have a total line for 670, so you're going to have an underscore after 670. In the cash and cash equivalents for the balance sheet, it's asking you that this is a total. What's the formula for the total? So it's the sum of rows 160 to 640, which is 160 to 640, so it will pick up the values from all of these accounts. Now these values can be brought in straight from AX, or you can type these values in. If you type these values in, we can see here we've got a different row for each bank account. For the bank account for USD, over on the right hand side, if you just double click, it's always comes in as a very squash screen. I will expand it to give a better view. And this is now showing all of your main accounts and your financial dimensions that you have set up. So it's quite a busy screen. What you can do is change the view that you're seeing. So if we look at the dimension set you've created for main account, cost center and department, you will only see those three. So in here, if we just drag down slightly, we're saying for the bank account USD, that will look up just the main account for 110110. What we can do is we can wrap all of the bank accounts into one line called bank, and then within the main account code we can say it's from 110110 to 110130. Then we can start summarizing the information to hand, so it shows us less detail, but it's a higher level that we can then drill down to. You can also include a dimension value set. So if you've created a dimension value set within AX, you're going to look up, there's nothing there set up in my data, but if you're using dimension value sets, you can bring the line level in from that value set. Okay, I can delete that just so that make sure it balances. What you can also do now is you can incorporate cost centers and departments. So we only want to see this line for the bank account for sales and marketing department. And we'll do an O22 to close. So now when we run this report, we'll see the bank account values, but only those that are posted for the marketing department. This allows you then to run several of the same bank account USD, but you can now call this sales and marketing. You can call the next bank account USD operations. So you can have a more granular breakdown of the bank account for US dollar than a standard main account. Okay. Then you basically incorporate all of the codes. As I say, you can bring this in bulk. If you edit, and you can insert rows from dimensions, if you're starting from a blank canvas, it will bring in every single code that you have available, and from there you can go and remove the code you want. Okay. You also have an option to use row links. Now the row link enables you to link this report to another source. Whether the source is another report you've already created, or whether it's to an Excel spreadsheet. You will create a new link, and it's asking what the new link is. So this could be an external worksheet. It's given it a default name. The description is a spreadsheet. And then in the reporting tree, as we'll come to shortly, you can then define where the spreadsheet is that you link to. So in one column you would have the data from AX, in the next column you can have a data from a spreadsheet. This is useful if you have recorded transaction outside of AX for statistics, for example. You can use this value and then you can do calculations on the value itself. So if you're doing quantity statistics, which you can do in AX, but if you wanted to hold that value, number of employees for example, in a spreadsheet, you can do that calculation. Okay, we'll come back into the balance sheet shortly, but just so that we can show how you amend side-by-side reporting. So we'll just close this. We then look at the columns. And in the columns, basically, this is the data that we're bringing in. So which period are we looking at? Which year are we looking at? The column A holds a description. This is the description of the row definition that we've created. So where we had bank account -USD, that would appear in column A. We could move that and put it in column C, but it has to appear somewhere in the reports. Some reports are useful if you have month to date on the left hand side, the description in the middle, and then on the right hand side you have the year to date, for example. So within the column type, you can say that this could be a calculated column. You could use row descriptions, as we do. You can use row definition codes that we just created, or account codes. You've also got the option to use amounts from external worksheets. So if you are linking to an Excel spreadsheet, you need to adjust your columns to show which column is going to bring in the data from the worksheet. So we can see this is FD, which means the financial dimensions, which is basically the values from AX. The next section is looking for book code. These are codes that you've created within AX. Actuals are your actual data. However, if you created budgets, as we'll look at shortly, you can select which budget line you're going to show in the report. The fiscal year is the base year. You can do base, plus or minus to show comparisons to previous years. And whether this is year to date or the period. So the period could show comparisons to this month and last, and so on. And then this column is looking at the detail itself. So it's a balance sheet. It's just going to show us year to date. Column widths. You can have an auto fit, or you can have a set column width if you're exporting to Excel. You can have a currency override. So if this report specifically needs to be shown in a set currency, you can do that. And it also allows you to see the same information on the same report for different currencies. So one would be GBP, one USD, one in euros perhaps. You can have calculated fields in the columns. These fields you would set not to print, but they would be a calculation of other columns. We'll come into this in a bit more detail when we look at some of the reports that we have set up. The next section is the reporting trees. You have the reporting tree, which is a hierarchy that you define within this report, or you can select from an organization hierarchy, as we mentioned before. And if you select the organization hierarchy, you're then asked which one you've created is to be included. So if you're looking at budgets, we can run it by budget departments. If we go and have a look at the tree itself, you can see how it's built. So over here is for any company. It's for the unit name 024, which is a financial dimension for finance, and then it's these business entities. Okay. The next section for sales and marketing is for department 22, department 23, and so on. If you're incorporating a spreadsheet, you can link to a worksheet, and it's this record within the worksheet that defines which worksheet you're looking for. If you head up the finance section on the left hand side, you can see it overall. Within the sales and marketing on the left, you can click and it can show you the area that you're looking at. When you save the report, it gives you an effective date by. This means you can run the same report and you can build up a log of when the reports were created. This is useful for your budget reports because you can have several revisions of your budget. If you wanted to run a report for actuals against budgets as per 6 months ago, then you run it back against the effective date. Okay. So again, we'll look at the reporting trees in a bit more detail when we run some of these reports. So that's the overview, basically, and some of the information that we can run. What we're going to do now is to look at some of the reports we have, and then we're going to show how you create one within a few minutes, just to get you started. So we'll start off with the 12 months actual to budget. So it loads up the information that we need. Everything's happy, so we're going to generate it. As I mentioned before, you can put generation of these reports on a time basis, or you can go in and manually push it through. Management Reporter is automatically installed with Dynamics AX, so you already get the reporting tool. It's not an add-on by any means. So here's an example of an income versus the actual versus budget for an income statement. So it's a standard report. You can see you've got actual budget year to date and then a variance, which is a calculation of the two fields. Scroll along and you can see this for every single month of the year. Okay, and it gives you the budgetary information. This budget information is defined on the budget type you've set in your columns. So it could be your original budget, it could be your first revision, it could be your second revision. You could create additional columns for every type of budget if you need to analyse the budget trends for periods. Go to gives you an option to highlight a specific level. So if you just want to go to net income, that will show you the net income screen. So in this instance, if you're doing a screen share and you're discussing a line with somebody, you can highlight it instantly. What do you want to show? Do you want to include headers and footers? Summary lines only. If we include the headers and footers, you suddenly have your logo because we included it in the header, and then the footers of the report as well. You can change the currency. If it's flagged to show in a different currency, we can say, let's see these values in euros. It pushes the report through again, recalculating, and it will bring up the values in euros. These values are based on the currency exchange rate at the time of posting the transactions. Okay. The default view when you're producing a report can be set. This is an XPS view, which means it can be published online, or you can run it to a report viewer, which we'll look at shortly. Now you can see all of the values have changed to euros. Okay, shows you down the bottom, and it's also a good idea why you then don't include any currency symbol in your calculations to avoid confusion. You can zoom if you want to better look at the report, or you can download. And if you click on download, it's asking you, how do we want to see this report? You can send it to Excel, you can send it to a defined XPS viewer, or Management Reporter viewer. We'll send it to Management Reporter viewer. Just accept that. While that's loading, I have one already made for an Excel spreadsheet, and this is how it exports to a spreadsheet. Some companies will always use spreadsheets, regardless of the tools in front of them. They feel comfortable with spreadsheets, which is why Microsoft have incorporated all their products in one umbrella. And you can see here that any gaps that would have appeared and any quirks that would normally come out when you export data into Excel, that would appear to be removed from the report itself. Okay. So whilst that's run, we should now have the report in the report viewer. Okay. So that's useful. Okay, we're just reloading it. It didn't like the change of currency. So I'm just going to run this report again and keep it in the standard currency. Everybody still with me? I'm assuming. So it's just going to rerun the report and build. You got the refresh button to push it along. So it's coming back up in the format. So we're going to send it back to report viewer. And the report viewer is part of the installation, and it gives you more opportunity to make comments and make adjustments to the report itself at any opportunity. So the previous version is the web version where you can still drill down into AX, as we'll see in a minute, but this isn't. The report viewer is where ordinarily it will go to somebody to make comments and so on before it goes out to be published. So we'll start off looking at the actuals for manufacturing. And if I highlight the manufacturing costs and do Shift and the bar, it will run along all of the manufacturing costs and highlight them. This then allows us to add a graph. So if I select a pie chart, you can see it's quite a busy screen it's running, so it's relatively detailed report. And you can pin it to your comments section. If I highlight selling expenses, but I only want to see it for actual for the year, then if we do control and space bar, you can do the actuals for the year. So we can run another pie chart, which gives us a little bit more meaning because it's giving us annual values. So what we're going to do is we're going to add this report to the list. Okay. And this report, we're going to undock it. So it's given us a very instant snapshot of the report itself. Now we know we're going to send this report into our management pack, so we're going to add some comment. Okay. So, and we can put along the lines of manufacturing expenses high due to seasonal demand. So now we can see that my login as administrator, the time and date, I've added a comment to explain why the manufacturing expenses are high, and then you can see the yellow sticky notepad on the left hand side highlighting that value. Okay. When you publish this report, the comments are published with it. This allows the report to go out with an explanation of any variances, any changes, so that instantly when the FD or CFO is looking at the report, they can see that's highlighted, we need to have a look at this. You've also got the option to send an instant message. If you're online using Microsoft Link and the person who created the report or is going to receive the report is also online, you can send them an instant message asking a question on the account. They can resolve it, maybe push a journal through. You can refresh the report. It will bring the new values through to change. This helps if you're running a tight month-end process and somebody hasn't processed the accruals, for example. You notice it straight away from running the report. You can instant message them, please run your accruals. They'll run it, republish the report, and it's all up to date. You can email the report instantly. If you highlight a value, we will look at the actuals for manufacturing expenses. You can drill down. This takes you in more detail. Well, we're happy with this, but we're not sure about that value. Because we're at the lower level transactions, and you can see that from the details that's given, we're now able to go to Dynamics. And one click, you can see down the bottom, Dynamics is flashing at us because we had it open, and it will take you to that transaction that we've highlighted. $2712, and from here you can do the traditional drill downs within AX to find the transaction origin and any original documentation supporting it. Okay. At any point you can copy the link, and if we select copy the link, you can then go back into AX, into your role center, and you can manage your links and your reports. So if we add a link to your report, this is going to be a URL, and you can paste the URL. Okay. And then you just add a title, so it's income report, and that's now saved. That's in your role center now, so if you click on income report, that will then load the income statement. Okay. So once you produce it, you can see that it's got the note against it. So all of the actions within the XPS report you can do within Viewer. The difference being in Viewer you can add reports, graphical reports, pie charts and bar graphs, etc. Click on the value there, you can drill down further, and it will allow you to keep going to the next level until you can actually see Dynamics itself. So if we click on this value, you can see the black square and say OK, open in Dynamics. Okay, that's an example of an income statement. We're going to look at a consolidation, then we'll look at the transaction ledger list. So if we double click, this is an example of a consolidation. Okay, so if we look at the column for the consolidation, you can see it's very standard because it's just actual, base and year to date, as we've seen previously. However, if we look at the reporting tree, we've created a bespoke reporting tree for consolidations by multi-level and regions. This is going to show us a report by country for each balance sheet, giving us a total for the consolidations. So we can see the companies all listed down here, and it's just giving us the name of the company we want to see. So when we generate the report, it's going to run through, and it will give us a list by country of the balance sheet basic consolidation column that we've created. So it's going to be an income statement, because you can see by the rows that it's the default row definition of income statement, but we're going to see it per country now. It takes a few minutes to load. Okay, so just complete very shortly. So it's requesting all the data. And that'll load up in a second. Once we've had a look at this, we will then move on to showing you a ledger transaction list. Then we'll view the side-by-side accounting, which is one change, and then it's done. And we'll finish off by showing you how you can get started with these reports by creating a wizard, using the wizard to create your own reports. Okay, so that really should have run by now, so here we go. So you can see the consolidation overall. This is for every company. If you now go to the reporting tree, we're going to ask which company do we want to look at. So we want to see this for Contoso Entertainment, and then it changes it per country. So the higher level is for everything as a full consolidation, and then you simply use your reporting tree to view the company you want. So we'll have a look at Russia, and there's not a lot of detail in the Russian accounts. Okay, if you click on that, you can drill down and you're back to the standard management reporter procedure. Okay, if anyone can speak Russian, they're happy to translate that value. So that's the consolidation. The ledger transaction list. This is one of the new features I mentioned, whereby now you can see the customer and the supplier name in a report. Okay. Previously, to do this, you would have used the supplier or the customer as a financial dimension and attached that to the record of posting. You don't need to do that anymore, and I will show you why in the column structure. You now have new attributes within these book code and categories, and you can see one of the attributes is a vendor name. So as long as the column type is attribute, then that allows you to pick up the attribute category of vendor name. And we'll run that report, and that will run through, and we can just look then at the ledger transaction list, and this is built to show you all of the accounts. What you can do in the row definition is to segregate your accounts, maybe so that you're only seeing expense accounts. This can be particularly useful for expenses reports. So if your employees are also suppliers and they're running expenses, you can segregate the categories and view the transactions. So when we're loading, if we go down the bottom and 601, And it should, what I made earlier. Okay, and there's a gap for vendor name there. The vendor name will appear. This is data from a latest download, so it's all journaled in, but the vendor name would appear in this column. Okay, I did have one previously already set up. I'll just find it. There. So you can see this is the vendor name, Acme Office Supplies, bought through. This could be a lot tidier, the report itself, but it's there to show you how it can work, and it's there for you to pick up and you analyze it and create the reports however you want to run it. Okay. The final report to show you is the side-by-side balance sheet. If we look at the rows, you'll see that it's a standard balance sheet and everything is in one full list, as we saw in the PowerPoint earlier. What we have in the format code, you now have column, where it inserts a column break, and everywhere you insert the column break will move it to the next column. So if you wanted to run a report in landscape view, you could insert a column here, and then that would move everything from current liabilities to the right hand column. And we've seen an example of how that looks. I'll run this report because now the reports are running slightly quicker. Just to give you an example. So again, that can be utilized not just for side-by-side balance sheet reporting. This could be, each employee could be side by side. And on the left hand column you'll see all of your expense types, mileage, fuel, salary, costs. Then each employee running side by side for each department. It's a very powerful tool for shaping your reports in any way that you need them to be formatted. Okay, so you'll see now that at the top of liabilities and shareholder equity, that is where we put the column split. And thankfully our balance sheet balances, as I'm sure yours does. Okay, finally, just to wrap up, how easy is it to create these reports? I'm sure some of you have already had a play with this to have a look around and see what you can do. As we'll look when we pop back to the PowerPoint, there is lots and lots of blogs and information centers for you to get the information of what you're trying to achieve. If we go to the wizard, this is how you can run your very first report. So if you're completely new to Management Reporter, this is how you'd run it. Let's have a look at income and actual. So the first section we're going to run is our actuals. The budget book code is going to be budgeted. Select next. So we're going to split the report up into sections just for revenue and expenses. So in the revenue category, we're going to include all of these accounts. Okay, and we're going to add them to be included in the revenue section. Now we want to look at operating expenses, and we can highlight the necessary reports for operating expenses. So you can see from the report sections, these are the standard sections that are available. You can select the section you require and then bring in the codes that it applies to. Then select next, and this is showing you how it's a very brief look of how it's going to look, and it gives you a chance to change the order. So we want revenue for services to move down so that other revenues is higher. We don't want to call this product sales, we want to call this revenue stream. So it gives you an opportunity to change the cosmetics of the report on a very high level. Next, it's going to give you a quick view of how the report would look. Do you want to create it one report for the entire company, or do you want to create multiple reports based on a segment? So do we want to run it by business unit and so on? We'll keep it for one report for simplicity, and then we'll give it a name. income statement standard, and we'll copy the name to be the same as the description. Which period we're going to run it for? I'm going to change the data so we have something in there, back to 2012, and we will select to generate the report after the wizard closes. So we'll go to next. It gives us the final information on what it's going to produce, and then we finish. That has gone off. It's created the rows, it's created the columns. We haven't decided to put a reporting tree against it at this point in time, so it hasn't got a reporting tree. It's now going to go off and open the report, and once it's open we can look at it, and then we can come back and make any amendments that are necessary based on what we've covered so far. So here's a very simple report. It looks okay for a first run. It gives us the base of our information. There's a lot of gaps. We don't really want to see the gaps. So we're going to close the report. And we're going to go into output and distribution, make sure the headers and footers are included. And now we want to include an image. So we'll pick up the EBEX image. And then we go to settings. We'll display any negatives in red. We don't want to see the currency symbol. And we don't want to display blanks for zeros. We also don't want to include rows with no amounts. Okay. Once that's complete, then you can regenerate and it will run the report. And then the report will come through looking a lot better, giving you a good basis of what you want to produce. And that has taken just under 2 minutes to get you started from nothing to your first income statement. Okay. Obviously on my laptop it's running locally, so I don't have a big powerful server that you would have, so it'll be less than 2 minutes. Just refresh that. And it's creating the report. It's taking out the blanks, which is the key to what we want to see. You'll add a logo in, and then it'll produce our report for us. Okay, so we'll show the header and footer. We can see the logo, and we've got rid of all of the gaps, and it's just now given us a good base of what we want to see. Okay, so that's the overview. It gives you an idea of exactly how you go into things, some new features that you've got. If we just drop back now to the PowerPoint. Okay. These are the useful links, which is why I will publish this PowerPoint presentation for you. They're all hyperlinked, so you can see the news, the latest news on Management Reporter. You can get quick tips and sample reports. There's some step-through videos, which are really useful. There's also training material. If you have a standard sandbox environment that shows you the Contoso database, the sample reports are great. Otherwise, if it's your data, you can use the training material. And there's a download center as well for upgrades. Obviously, if you speak to us about any upgrades, to make sure of any impacts elsewhere. Just to finish, I want to show you very quickly the mobile apps. We've seen how you can take a management reporter into the role center. We've talked about how you get it into SharePoint. What we have is the Business Analyzer. Now, can you all see the Business Analyzer loading? Should be a reporting screen now.
Yep. Excellent.
This is based on several elements from Microsoft. Everything is moving towards apps, as I'm sure you're aware. The whole world is moving to apps, let alone Microsoft. So this shows you graphs and charts that are predefined in the database. So if you create a BI report, these can be set up to appear in the Business Analyzer. Any KPIs you've created from the cubes you can include, but then there's a section on the end for the reports, and these reports are your Management Reporter reports, as you can see. So as soon as they're published to the app, they're available to view mobile on the road. Okay, as soon as you're online. and you decide the reports you want to view. So from this list, you include the reports for the finance director may have one batch, CFO another, the MD another batch of reports. When they log on to their tablet, be it Android, iOS, or Windows Mobile, as soon as they've published, as soon as all the data's been published and updated, they can have instant mobile access to the reports. Okay. And that was basically as much as I was going to cover today. So if you've got any questions, I'm all ears. Any questions?
Hi, just it's Jeremy. And the role centre where you put the link to a report on there.
Yes.
When you click on that link, does that run the report, or does it just download the latest version that somebody's run?
It downloads the latest version that somebody's run.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
So, anyone else?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time.
That's very good. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
We've run over slightly. I will obviously, if you speak to your account manager, because within this pack I'll include the version of Management Reporter that's available, and then you can see where you are in terms of your version of AX to Management Reporter. And if you can upload your Management Reporter to the latest version, you can have these new features which will help you massively. So if you contact your account manager, they can help you with that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Okay,
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.